Ever see a sign that screams, "Do not enter"? Yeah, me neither. Not until the sign started screaming back. We were 3 hours off track, maybe 4. The GPS had given up somewhere around Nowhereville, and the forest road we took seemed to be swallowing our last shreds of sanity. Every so often, the headlights caught glimpses of ancient trees that looked like twisted corpses. Then, just when I thought we'd be lost forever, we saw it. A gas station that looked like it was held together with duct tape and spite.
Think they take card?
Alex quipped. I laughed, but it came out shaky. We pulled up, and an old man limped out, wiping his hands on a rag that might have been white 50 years ago.
Y'all lost.
His voice sounded like gravel gargling whiskey. Before I could answer, he leaned in closer, sniffing the air like a goddamn bloodhound. His dull eyes locked on mine.
Ain't no way back if you take that road ahead, so you might want to turn around. Just a warning.
Alex, the eternal smartass, laughed.
Cool story, Gramps. Fill her up, will you?
I should have listened. Hell, I should have turned the car around, but I didn't. We drove on and the forest seemed to close in tighter, like it was trying to swallow us whole. Then we saw the figure. A woman standing in the middle of the road, her back to us, long hair covering her face.
Jesus Christ, is she asking to die?
I slammed on the brakes. She didn't move. And when I stepped out to check on her, that's when I saw the blood dripping from her fingertips, pooling at her bare feet. The woman didn't move, not even as I crept closer. I called out, "Ma'am, are you hurt?" No response, just the sound of blood dripping onto the cracked asphalt. Alex honked the horn and yelled something, but my attention was on her. Her head snapped toward me so fast I nearly pissed myself. Her face, oh God, her face, looked like someone had carved chunks out of it with a dull knife. And her eyes, it's like someone took a spoon and scooped them out. There wasn't anything there but bloodied empty eye sockets. I stumbled back as she started walking toward me. No, not walking. Jerking as if she had to force her limbs forward one bone-snapping movement at a time. My brain screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. That's when Alex leaned out the window.
Dude, get the fuck back in the car.
Before I could move, she let out this guttural, otherworldly scream, and everything went dark. Not like night dark, but pitch black, like someone had erased the world. When I came to, I was in the car, and Alex was slamming the gas pedal. The woman was gone. Alex drove like our asses were on fire, but now the road seemed to be twisting and shifting beneath us. Shadows darted between the trees, keeping pace with the car, their red eyes glaring at us. "What the fuck is happening?" I screamed.
I don't know, but we're getting the hell out of here.
We didn't. The road didn't end. It just looped back to the gas station, where the old man stood, grinning like he'd won the lottery.
Told ya. I bet now you wished you would've listened.
The old man's grin burned into my brain like a scar. Alex threw the car into reverse and spun us around, peeling out onto the dark road. The headlights barely cut through the blackness, but we didn't care. He floored it. The road stretched on, endless and looping. We must have passed the same dead trees and broken pavement dozens of times. The GPS was blank, and Alex had stopped cracking jokes. That silence was worse than anything. Then we saw it again. Her. The woman from before was back, standing in the middle of the road with her back to us, her bloodied hands dangling at her sides. "Fuck this," I growled, reaching for the door handle. "We're not running this time." Alex, never one to leave me without a wingman, was right next to me as we shouted.
Hey, what do you want? Why don't you just...
She turned. Her face was worse now. Pieces of skin hung from her skull like tattered cloth, and her mouth stretched wide, releasing that same scream of insanity. Alex froze. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. And then, as if some invisible hand had grabbed him, his body twisted violently. The sound of his bones breaking echoed through the night as I watched my friend be crushed. He looked straight at me, mouthed run, and then was gone. I ran, jumped into the driver's seat and gunned it out of there. I don't remember how long I drove. Minutes? Hours? Time didn't matter anymore. The road kept looping back to the gas station, and each time the old man was waiting, grinning that goddamned grin. Finally, the car sputtered and died. Out of gas. I was alone now. I stepped out into the cold, silent night. The road behind me faded into the darkness, and the gas station flickered once before vanishing completely. Ahead, the forest loomed, its gnarled branches reaching for the sky, and then I saw it. A faint light, flickering deep within the trees. I knew I shouldn't, but fuck it. My feet moved on their own, crunching over the dead leaves as I followed the light. It led me to a clearing where the woman stood, her back to me again. This time, she spoke.
"I've got a surprise for you,"
she said without turning around. Behind me, I heard the rumble of an engine. When I turned, my car was back, parked at the edge of the clearing, headlights on. Only it wasn't my car anymore. Alex was behind the wheel, his mangled face staring at me, blood dripping from his mouth as he smiled. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the night.
I don't know who thought it was a good idea to go camping where the map stopped, but I'm pretty sure they're dead now. Dead or insane. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway. 5 friends, 1 crappy RV, and a case of beer. But when our premium campsite turned out to be a mosquito-infested swamp, Ty decided we should find a spot off the grid. We stumbled across the cabin around sundown. No roads led to it, no paths nearby. Just a broken-down shack squatting in the woods like it was waiting for us.
Free Airbnb.
Ty joked, pushing the creaky door open. Inside, the place was empty. No furniture, no food, not even a damn spider web. Just 4 walls, a ceiling, and, strangely, no door on the other side.
"Cozy,"
Aaliyah muttered, hugging her arms. That's when the groaning started. Soft at first, like the wood of the cabin was settling around us. We figured it was just the normal creaks of a structure or something, until it came from all directions, all at once. Then we saw them. Faces. Dozens of them, pressing against the walls, stretching the wood like fucking latex. Their mouths moved in silent screams, their eyes wide. That's when the first scream started, shaking me out of my paralysis. I turned and couldn't make out what I was seeing. It was like my brain said, "Nope, we will deal with that later." I realized Jesse stood rigid, his mouth open, screaming. Liz was trying to pull him away from the wall. He was shaking now, his body vibrating with pain as mouths bit into him, blood pooling at his feet. The walls, oh God, the walls, with those grotesque heads were closing in, as if the cabin woke up and decided it needed a midnight snack. At that same moment, I saw that the doorway was shrinking, closing in on itself. We had to get out of here. I pushed Aaliyah out and Ty grabbed Liz, but she wouldn't let go of Jesse. I yelled for them to run. The doorway was closing. Aaliyah and I made it outside, yelling back at them to hurry, to run, to get the hell out of there. Before it completely collapsed on itself, Ty tore through the splintered doorway, clawing his way outside. I saw missing chunks of flesh that had been taken out of his arms from those damned faces. But we didn't have time to figure that out. We ran to the RV. Ty, taking the keys out of his pocket, jumped behind the wheel, white-knuckled and drenched in sweat. Aaliyah sat beside him, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. I was in the back, staring at the cabin as it shrank into the distance. The RV groaned under the strain as he slammed the gas pedal. The road was dark and narrow, the trees crowding us like spectators at a gladiator match. My heart was still hammering in my chest when the crash happened. It was sudden, violent. One moment we were speeding away, and the next we were flying forward as the RV crumpled like an aluminum can. My head hit the dashboard, and I tasted blood. When I came to, Aaliyah was screaming. I stumbled out, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. The RV was a wreck, the front end crushed in like we'd hit a wall. But the road was empty. No trees, no rocks, no goddamn wall. Just the black asphalt stretching endlessly. Ty was still in the driver's seat, or what was left of it. His body was twisted, mangled in ways a human body shouldn't bend. His face was frozen in a mask of horror, his dead eyes staring at something I couldn't see. What the hell did we hit? There's nothing here, I said, my voice barely audible. We stood there in the eerie silence, the only sound the soft creak of the RV's broken frame. That's when Aaliyah noticed it.
Look, this doesn't make any sense.
Ahead of us, the road simply ended, like someone had taken a giant pair of scissors and snipped it off. Beyond it was dense forest, thick and dark. We decided to walk the opposite way, thinking maybe we could find another road or a way out. But every direction we went, the forest seemed to fold in on itself, pushing us back toward the road. And then we saw it. The cabin. It was there, just like before, sitting innocently in the middle of the clearing. Only now the door was wide open, beckoning us. We were right back where we started, and the sickening realization hit me. There was no way out. The cabin wasn't a place. It was a trap, and we were already caught.
The sign read, "Welcome to Dusk Moore." But the rotting corpses hanging from the streetlights weren't so welcoming. I was low on gas and lower on common sense when I turned into this dusty place. My car sputtered into a parking spot outside what looked like a diner. All I needed was a gallon of coffee to keep me going. When I got out, the smell hit me. Something metallic and rancid, like roadkill soaked in motor oil. The diner looked like it hadn't seen a customer since the 1970s. But the neon open sign was flickering on, so I accepted that challenge. I pushed the door open, and the bell overhead gave a hollow jingle, like it didn't really want to announce me. Inside, it looked like what you'd expect. The air was thick, as if no one had opened a window for the last few decades. A handful of people sat in the booths, staring at their plates as if whatever was on them was some kind of punishment. When they looked up, their faces were slack with dull stares, which kinda creeped me the fuck out. But I had priorities. I tried to act as if what I walked into was normal and ordered a coffee, but the waitress, skin pale as bone, just stood there.
Pay first,
she said, voice rusty like I'd been her first conversation of the day. Sure, I said, slapping a 20 on the counter. That's when I got red flag number 2. I noticed her hands. Fingers long and skeletal, nails black and cracked. She saw what I was looking at and grinned. Then she leaned over and whispered red flag number 3.
You shouldn't have come here. Run.
I bolted out the door, leaving the coffee and my change behind. The street outside wasn't the same. The off-ramp from the highway gone. My car, gone. Replaced by a maze of alleys that twisted and stretched in all directions. I tried to backtrack to my car, but nothing was the same. It was as if the rundown diner off the highway never existed. The only landmarks were the flickering streetlights and the bodies. At first, I didn't notice them, but as I turned a corner, there they were, corpses, bloated and rotting, hanging from the streetlights like grotesque ornaments. Their faces were frozen in expressions of terror, mouths open in silent screams. I gagged, bile rising in my throat. That's when I heard the footsteps. They weren't normal footsteps. They sounded wet, like bare feet slapping against concrete. I turned around and my breath hitched. It wasn't footsteps at all. Not exactly. It dragged its bloated body along the concrete, using a foot cut off at the ankle, like a walking stick, to give itself leverage. With every slap of the foot hitting the ground, that thing dragged itself closer. That's when I realized it had no legs. There was nothing below the waist except for ropey intestines slithering behind, like lethargic snakes. I think that broke my brain because, for one wild, insane moment, I thought, is that its own foot? That seemed like a good time for more cardio, so I ran. My legs felt like lead, but fear drove me forward. I rounded a corner and slammed into someone. A man, tall, gaunt, and reeking of decay, caught me by the arms. His grip was like iron. But that didn't matter because I couldn't take my eyes off of the brain fudge falling out of the side of its head. I lost my ever-loving shit then. I tore free and bolted into what I thought was another alley, but it wasn't. It was the diner. The waitress was waiting for me. She finished placing fingers on the side of a burger and said,
You're up, Buttercup.
The other diners stood, their forms distorted and grotesque. The door slammed shut behind me, and I was trapped. I don't know how I escaped. I remember smashing through a window, glass slicing my arms and face, and running until I collapsed. When I woke up, I was on the edge of the street. The "Welcome to Dusk Moore" sign looming over me. The road stretched ahead, empty and endless. But something told me I wasn't free. When I looked back, the streetlights flickered on. The bodies were still hanging, but now, one of them was wearing my jacket.